So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Stevenson, and I'm honored to be here once again as president of the Ontario Association of Architects. I'd like to begin this AGM by recognizing that where we are meeting is Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. As descendants of settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. In Toronto, whose name comes from the Haudenosaunee word tukaranto, we acknowledge that it is the traditional territory of the Iroquois, Haudenosaunee, the Métis, and the Huron-Wendat peoples, and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. It was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, we are governed by the Upper Canada Treaties, which were also agreements to share and care for the land and resources around the Great Lakes. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection of Toronto's original peoples to this place. We also recognize the contributions the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples have made, both in shaping and strengthening this community and our province and our country. As settlers and descendants of settlers, this recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be clearly and overtly connected to our commitment to make the promise and challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. As architects, this challenges us to understand and respect the placemaking traditions of Indigenous people in the work that we do, and to look for authentic Indigenous voices and participation in that work. On behalf of your 2018 Council, I would like to welcome you to the Association's 128th Annual General Meeting. Our format for the meeting will, of course, include the necessary business. As well, it features some specific celebratory highlights, which includes recognition of our newly licensed members. Immediately following the formal agenda, I invite everyone to join me for the welcome reception in the next ballroom to continue the celebration and kick off the OEA conference. At this time, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the members of the 2018 Council. I will recognize the Council members in alphabetical order and ask that each Councillor please stand to be recognized and remain standing until all members of Council have been called. First, I would like to recognize Councillor Mazen Al-Kadam, representing Central Ontario, who is unfortunately not able to be here this evening. Next, I would like to ask Darn O'Deal, representing Western Ontario, to please stand. There's Dawn. Would Melissa Odette, our Vice President Regulatory and one of our newest Council members representing the electoral district of the Province of Ontario, please rise? Melissa. Next, I would like to ask yet another new member of Council representing the City of Toronto, Amir Azada, to please stand. Would Bill Birdsall, new to this Council and representing the Province of Ontario, but a veteran to past Councils, as well as a past President, please rise? I would next like to recognize our Vice President, Walter Durhack, representing Western Ontario. Please stand, Walter. Next, I would ask that Gord Erskine, our Vice President Strategic, who represents Eastern Ontario, please stand. Would City of Toronto Representative and Vice President Communications, Vanessa Fong, please rise? Next, I would ask Jeremiah Gammond, who is the first licensed technologist OEA to hold the position on Council, to please stand. I would like to ask our Lieutenant Governor and Council appointee Ken Jennings to please rise. Next, I would like to ask Senior Vice President and Treasurer Kathleen Curtin, who represents the City of Toronto, to please stand. Would Council Member Jeffrey Labarge, who represents Northern Ontario, please rise and be recognized? Would Lieutenant Governor and Council appointee Michelle Longlade also please rise? Next, I would like to call on Lieutenant Governor and Council appointee Wayne Medford to please stand. Also, our long-standing LGIC appointee Elaine Mintz, please stand to be recognized. Would Sarah Murray, another of our newest Council members representing the electoral district of Eastern Ontario, please rise? Would Councillor David Rich, who represents the City of Toronto, please rise? David Sin, representing the Province of Ontario, you as well. Lieutenant Governor and Council appointee Robert Sermon, would you also please rise? A welcome to Council's newest intern representative, Anna Stefanovic. Please stand. And finally, I would ask Councillor Majid Youssef, who represents Central Ontario, to please rise. As we do each year, it is important to recognize the efforts of these individuals and the hard work that they perform as members of OAA Council. There are many committees and working groups that carry out the work of the OAA, and each of these people work very hard to help support the membership in their voluntary role on Council and on committees and working groups. Please join me in thanking all of these members for their efforts. Thank you, everyone, and you can sit down. I encourage you to speak with any of these members of Council over the next few days as you participate in conference events this year. I would also like to take a moment to introduce OAA staff members who are present with us here today. One of the newest members of OAA staff, Manager of Communications Eric Mizio, Marcia Cooper, our Communications Specialist, OAA's Registrar Nedra Brown,